Hi, this is Tom Wegchild. In this video newsletter, we will ask the question, are you God's greatest mistake or are you God's treasure? If you are to end fear, you must reconnect with your spiritual DNA. All fear arises from our misunderstanding of who and what we are. You are an infinite, individuated aspect of consciousness. In this dimension of space-time, birth is individuated consciousness coming into a physical body. Death is individuated consciousness exiting that physical body. With or without the game token you call a physical body, as consciousness, you still exist. When you believe that your existence requires a physical body, you must accept the limitations that come with the physical form. The natural consequence is the creation of fear. You are not your body. When you get this wrong, instead of a spiritual being having an earthly experience, you become a physical body struggling for the limited resources that you believe you need for your continued existence. The world becomes a frightening place full of conflict, struggle, and pain. You perceive that you are under constant attack from outside forces that appear to be beyond your control. In reality, a body is merely a game token that is required to hold the space on Earth's play school in space and time. If you want to play in this fear-based planet, you need a body. However, when you mistake the bodily game token for what you really are, you accept the idea of lack, limitation, and separation to be your natural birthright. You become an earner, not a learner. Your very livelihood is contingent on getting the next task right. As an earner, whenever you fail, rewards are withheld and punishment ensues. Fear arises anytime you get either of these two questions wrong. The first is, what am I? The second is, what do I value and why? In the Bible, there is a story of the prodigal son. This story can tell us a great deal about the problems that arise when we fail to recognize our true identity. When you believe you are an earner rather than a recipient of unconditional love, you will also fail to understand your true relationship with your Creator, your Source, your universe, or what you might call God. Let us look at that story. In this story, a wealthy father has two sons, both on which he showers with his affections. One day, one of his sons requests from the father his inheritance so that the son can do with it what he wants. The son believes this will make him happy, and the father complies with the son's wishes. This son goes off and quickly spends his entire inheritance. Having lost his inheritance, the prodigal son must now work if he is to eat. He finds that life is a hard struggle. Eventually, the son decides that even his father's servants have a better lifestyle than what he has created for himself. The prodigal son vows to return to his father's home with the hope of at least being given a job. This son longs for the quality of life that his father's servants enjoy. Yet the son realizes that he alone has squandered his inheritance and has no expectation of being treated any better than a common servant. Upon his son's return, the father orders a great feast and restores the prodigal son to his full birthright. This parable is difficult for the egoic mind to grasp. Although one can perhaps understand the joy of the father felt for the return of his long-lost son, what about the good son that had stayed at home, obeying his father's wishes. To the ego, it seems unjust that the prodigal son should regain the inheritance that he had squandered. It seems that the father is being unfair to the good son. The good son is being asked to surrender or sacrifice part of his future inheritance so that the prodigal son can be restored to his former glory. To the ego, this seems to be a great injustice. We will discuss the various aspects of this parable of the prodigal son in a future newsletter. But today, I would like to focus on the father's reaction to the prodigal son's return. To the father, the son was his treasure. The father only wanted his son to be happy. The son's happiness, not the father's wealth, was what the father valued. The prodigal son felt that if he received his full inheritance, it would make him happier. Therefore, when the prodigal son asked to receive his inheritance early, the father granted that wish. The father did not necessarily want his son to leave his home, but valued his son's happiness more. To be happy, the son felt he needed to be free to explore the world on his terms. Love does not bind, but instead offers freedom to the recipient. Unconditional love makes no demands upon the recipient of that love. To the giver of unconditional love, happiness comes from the giving of that love and the happiness that giving brings to the recipient. Love expects nothing in return, for to give is to receive. The prodigal son's choice to freely return to his father's house signaled to the father that his treasure was back home where he belonged. The prodigal son's choice to freely return to his father's home signaled to the father that his treasure was back home where he belonged. The father could once again directly shower the child with his love and see the joy in his son's face. The father's joy was complete in knowing that his son was once again happy, safe, and comfortable in his home. The prodigal son saw himself as a sinner that had lost his inheritance and had to earn his livelihood. Instead of seeing his misadventures as a learning experience that would help him become a more knowledgeable person and perhaps a better son, the son perceived himself to be a failure who had squandered and forever lost his inheritance. Within the son's own mind, he had transformed an inquisitive learner into an earner that must suffer the consequences for any mistake. A learner recognizes that mistakes are learning opportunities that provide the feedback needed to make mid-course corrections. To an earner, mistakes are failures that become sins which require penance and punishment. The prodigal son condemnation was self-condemnation. Within the son's own mind, his self-condemnation had now transformed his father's unconditional love into conditional or false love that must be earned, could be lost, sold, stolen, or cease to flow. Unconditional love just flows. You can deny the flow, but your refusal to accept that love has no power to stop its flow. You are like the prodigal son. You are God's treasure. Rather than try to earn God's love through your ego's plan that requires atoning for your perceived sins, merely accept your role in God's plan for your salvation. That role is only to be perfectly happy and return to the truth that your divine inheritance has never been lost, only forgotten. When you realize that God's will is your perfect happiness, it is easy to accept God's plan for your salvation. It is easy to say that God's will and your will are the same. You are a spiritual being having an earthly experience. You are God's beloved child with whom she is well pleased. When you correctly identify yourself as God's beloved child, you realize that this world is not your home. You can freely accept God's unconditional love. A God of unconditional love would never condemn you. It is only your own ego's belief that you are God's mistake rather than God's treasure that keeps you trapped in fear. Drop your ego's claim that you are a sinner that deserves punishment. Stop being a victim of your own ego's blame, shame, and guilt game that requires a pound of flesh for your past actions, decisions, or beliefs that your ego now claims were inappropriate. You are a learner, not an earner. Stop perceiving yourself to be a sinner. Only self-condemnation keeps you trapped. Forgive yourself and reclaim your divine inheritance. You cannot escape your destiny, for it is guaranteed by your spiritual DNA. A God of unconditional love awaits you. Its treasure, long anticipated return. The question I would like to leave you with today is, do you see yourself as God's treasure or God's mistake? If a mistake, give yourself permission to make another choice. Create a great day for yourself and your world. If you'd like more information on this topic or like to sign up for our newsletter, click the link below or visit us on our website, endingfear.org or understandingacoursein miracles.org. This is Tom Wakechild. Ask you to create a great day for yourself and your world. Namaste.